right, piloting Red, White, Burn.
And keep in mind that we're also going to be giving away 3 free months of Star City Games premium content through our trivia giveaway in this elimination round.
All right, so game is underway. Remember, Diaz was on the play. He started the game on Mutavault. Chris VanMeter on a Black-Red Temple, currently deciding on his Scry. Remember, both players in a top 8 do know what each other's deck lists are, so Chris does have some extra information to work off of with this Scry land.
And the big departure in Erin's list from the conventional builds of Red, White, Burn is 4 main deck copies of Toil Trouble. Very good in control matchups. He can fuse it potentially off of his copies of Mana Confluence, 2 in his deck, but by and large, it's just for the red half.
All right, well, turn 2, Erin takes some free damage while it's there. Chris is tapped out, so Erin crashes in with a Mutavault, gets first damage, and VanMeter's down to 18.
Yeah, and with draws like this, it's hard to know whether or not there's something wrong with Erin's hand, or if this was just a convenient spot for him to get 2 points of damage in.
Yeah, well, Chris is going to go ahead and make Scavenging Ooze here. Nothing in the graveyard yet, but that is a card that John sometimes the Burn deck at least has to pay attention to. It is repeatable life gain and a decent clock.
Yeah, and it also can muck up Chandra's Phoenix as well, which is a valuable tool against a deck like Jund Monsters because they're a little soft in the air, and of course you can just get it back with your burn spells going upstairs.
Yeah. We see here, we'll see what the first threat that Diaz gets to deploy is. If he's going to go for Chandra's Phoenix, he's not. It's Searing Blood. You said Burn, always good in a matchup where its Searing Bloods are live. Well, this certainly is one. He takes care of Scavenging Ooze and knocks VanMeter down to 15.
That's a big win here for Erin because that Searing Blood is often stranded. The Jund Monster list full of just big creatures. You're really only looking at Elvish Mystic and then occasionally spots where you can tag Scavenging Ooze with that card. So that's a great exchange for Erin. Both because of what happens to the board and the total resources that he's working with.
Interesting play here. This is turn 3 Courser of Crewfix for Chris. Now, you'd said leading up to this that this can be a difficult matchup for Jund, right? This is Red White's on probably the favorable side of this. Courser of Crewfix is a card which is another source of repeatable life gain. You know, that can be any source of repeatable life gain can be pretty hard for a Burn deck to deal with.
Especially the ones that work in small chunks like Scavenging Ooze potentially does and like Courser of Crewfix, because Skullcrack can break up big chunks of life gain, but it's much less effective trying to break up one at a time.
Well, a huge gain here for VanMeter. Erin did not have a 4th land, did not have a play turn 3. He simply passed the turn back to Chris, who gets to untap with a Courser in play and still at a healthy 15 life.
This is a great spot here for Chris. He does have to get a move on here because if Erin finds white mana, Chris has to imagine that all hell breaks loose, but Chris has got to like his spot here.
Yeah, we see in his hand Domri Rod, a pair of lands, both Mutavault and Forest. Looks like Abrupt Decay, Storm Breath, Dragon. He has a lot of options available to him.
The Red White Burn deck does regularly miss white mana. It's gotten a little bit better now that the deck has access to Mana Confluence, but this is still not that uncommon. There's only 12 white sources in Erin's list.
And we see there, Domri Rod is the play for VanMeter. He's going to plus it to draw the Sylvan Caryatid. It looks like he's fishing for that bonus land, and it's going to hit. Stomping Ground was the card hiding under the Caryatid.
Yeah, this is nice, but this game is probably not going to come down to a card advantage resource fight. It's going to be whether or not Chris can just win the race in time.
Yeah, well, certainly being able to gain life, like being able to guarantee that he makes a land drop every turn and gains life every turn that the Courser is alive is important. It's kind of, in that way, you could say it's like a Staff of a Death Magus almost in the matchup. But I think you're right. The matchup's fast enough that card advantage isn't huge here.
It's still nice. It's still a resource, but it's just about Chris being able to cobble together lethal in time.
Yeah, and now Chris for this turn, he goes ahead and swings Courser of Crewfix as opposed to leaving it back to block Mutavault. And you were saying if this is a racing situation, then that's what he wants to be doing, right?
Yeah, you do risk maybe, he draws white mana this turn, he's able to hit you with Mutavault and Boros Charm you or something, but Chris cannot sit around all day. He's got to start attacking, and he's got the resources to damage race just this Mutavault. And if Erin's using his mana that way instead of casting spells, Chris is pretty happy.
Yeah, looks like Chris has passed the turn. Erin's deciding what to do on Chris's end step here.
Yeah, and I think Erin, the way this game is shaping up, he cannot fight a battle over resources at all. He's just got to go straight to Chris.
Yeah, so he's just going to have to suck up the life gain from Courser.
Yeah, it's not great, but there's no real alternative here. Trying to whittle down this Domri or use spells to fight over this Courser, Chris is going to be able to win the game with his leftovers. Almost doesn't matter what it is, but...
So since Magma Jet upstairs puts Chris down to 14, we do get a glimpse of Erin's hand for the first time. At least a Skullcrack hides in there, possibly more. He's going to draw for the turn. At least one card was scryed to the top here, so... We'll see where he goes from here. Boros Charm hiding in his hand. And I don't know if he has any damage with creatures. It may be all spell damage.
Well, that's not bad here because his creatures are worth very little going forward. He's playing against Domri's already in play. You got to assume Chris has some removal spells in his hand. There's a Dreadbore on top of the deck. So Erin would like to first, I believe, find white mana, and then after that, find nothing but spells.
All right, and here's a card that you were talking about, the newest addition to the Red White Burn deck. He's going to tap both red for Eidolon of the Great Revel.
I think this is actually positive for Chris that this card got played this turn instead of something else. Chris is in a spot now where he can start just deploying 4 and 5 mana cards, and he is committed to damage racing at this stage of the game, and so the Eidolon constrains Erin's development and probably does very little to impact what Chris wants to do.
So you're actually going to say that there's a chance here that Chris was going to leave it alive because it actually is good for him?
Yeah, I think there was a chance that was going to happen.
Yeah. Chris takes no such risk. He uses a Domri to make Courser fight the Eidolon and then plays Stormbreath Dragon, crashing in for 6 damage. Chris is up to 15 thanks to that life gain. Erin drops down to 12. And Erin's running out of time here. He has no defense in the deck.
If that was a mana confluence, maybe we would have a race on our hands, but instead it's Temple of Triumph, and that's likely going to be just too slow here for Erin to deploy his hand.
So going back to that Magma Jet scry, Erin has to put both on bottom then off it, right?
Yes, and I believe he did.
He did, yeah.
Yeah,
he's just looking for an untapped land.
The only thing that he's drawing to there is white mana. That's it. Nothing else in his deck really matters at that point.
All right, well, he goes ahead and he takes care of the Domri with a Mutavault swing. But we see another Stormbreath on top for VanMeter. And remember, these burn decks have very, very little defensive capabilities.
On the other side of the bracket, Gerard Fabiano up a game.
Yeah, remember Fabiano with Esper Control. He's the 8 seed trying to take down Larry Suriel, who's playing Mono Black.
Not a surprise. Usually Esper, pretty big favorite in game 1 because Mono Black has so much removal in the deck. Post board, you get to streamline a little bit, cut those Bile Blights and Devour Fleshes and add Duresses.
It's like once the 8th Thoughtseize plan comes in, the match can change.
It changes a bit. I'll handle the trivia question.
All right, we see another land from VanMeter goes up to 16. He's going to go ahead and keep Stormbreath on top. He taps the top of his deck.
Mm-hmm. I like it.
Yep, I agree.
Stormbreath's a pretty good draw here.
Yeah, swing for 8, and that's going to put Diaz down to 4 here. Conveniently for VanMeter, he has a 4-mana haste creature on top of his deck, and I don't see Diaz getting out of this game.
Yeah, not even Warleader's Helix allows him to gain enough life to get out of this, so that's just it.
Game 1 goes to Chris VanMeter. Wins one on the draw.
Erin keeps a risky hand there, and it did not pan out in time.
Yeah. So those players are going to board out, are right now going to get ready for Game 2. But before they start Game 2, we're going to go ahead and bring you into the booth. If you're just joining us, Matthias Hunt, Patrick Sullivan, we're bringing you the top 8 coverage of the Star City Games Standard Open here in Somerset, New Jersey. And it's time for us to throw some trivia out to those of you following us on Twitter. If you don't know the rules of the game, what happens is during the top 8, top 4, and finals of both our Standard and Legacy Opens, we throw out a trivia question. First one's worth 3 months of free Star City Games Premium for at least one person who answers it correctly. To answer it correctly, you have to 1, have a Twitter account. 2, tweet the correct answer to the question, and you have to have the hashtag SCG Premium, as you see it on the bottom of the screen, has to be attached to your tweet. You'll have until the end of our top 8 coverage to submit a correct answer.
And make sure to tweet that at SCG Live. Make sure that you're following us on Twitter so we can get you your prize. And please keep in mind that this trivia contest is run at the sole discretion of StarCityGames.com. Twitch TV is no way affiliated with this giveaway. Our lawyers make us say that. So the question is, Aaron Diaz, we have him in the elimination rounds right now. He's playing Red, White, Burn. There is a fuse card in his list that you don't typically see in Burn list. Name that fuse card.
All right, so looking for a fuse card in Aaron Diaz's burn list. Remember, the deck lists are posted at our coverage on StarCityGames.com if you are just joining us.
If you can't find this, shame on you. I don't know what else to tell you. Remember, tweet us at SCG Live, hashtag SCG Premium, and make sure that you're following us on Twitter so we can get that prize over to you.
All right. Let's bring us back into the match. We have to talk about some sideboarding before they get started.
Some sideboarding here.
All right. Well, Diaz is down a game. He's playing red-white burn. You've played a lot of red-white burn, and you told me that you were impressed with his sideboard.
This is a great sideboard. The big middle finger to the mirror match here with Nyx Fleece Ram and Peak Eruption is just great. I'm a big fan of that. Now that those cards add a lot of utility here. He's got 2 copies of Chain of the Rocks, 3 Banishing Lights, and 4 Fire Drinker Satyrs. It's an interesting sideboarding situation here because on one hand, Erin does want to have some answers to the big threats that Chris is going to add to the table. And Banishing Light and Chain of the Rocks fulfill that role. But there's 2 problems. One is that it dilutes his deck. Everything that he adds is at the expense of some sort of burn spell, of course. That's really all his deck produces. And the second problem is that VanMeter plays with Abrupt Decay. So those cards aren't necessarily that staple. So he has one path to take in sideboarding, which is bring in the Banishing Lights, bring in the Chain of the Rocks, and sort of cross his fingers and hope that they either stick or provide enough tempo to take over the game. The other plan is to say, never mind, I want to turn this into a pure damage race. Maybe even go and get his Peak Eruptions and bring those in as well. Try to keep Chris off his big stuff that way and ignore the threats that Chris brings to the table.
Yeah, remember Chris's deck does play, it only plays 7 mountains actually. So how do you feel about that? Peak Eruption, again, I mean, his Sur's deck's red, but he's got a lot of temples. Like, is 7 mountains enough to actually board in that card? There's a chance that Chris just keeps hand without a mountain.
Yeah, the thing is, the upside is really, really high. If you ever resolve it, I think early on in the game, you're a huge favorite to win. It's just, there's a lot of different paths here that Erin can take in the matchup. He's probably going to cut the 3 copies of Searing Blood. They really can only tag Elvish Mystic and occasionally Scavenging Ooze, occasionally Mutavault, but we're not talking about a lot of targets here. So those cards can pretty easily come out, and you can either do the conventional approach, which is just bring in the Banishing Lights and the Chain of the Rocks and try to have answers to the large creatures Chris plays, or you can go the alternate route where he tries to ignore that altogether. And I'm curious which one he's going to take. Most players just go with the conventional route. I've played a lot, and I do that myself quite often, but the more that I play, sometimes I feel, at least on the play, you're supposed to abandon all that stuff and maybe actually bring in Chain of the Rocks. Bring in Peak Eruption, rather.
You're playing in the top 8. You're piloting Burn, something you've done once or twice before. What are you doing here?
I think probably -3 Searing Blood, +3 Peak Eruption is my plan.
Are you going to switch it again if when you win game 2? Are you switching?
Yeah, because on the draw, the Peak Eruptions get so much worse, and you need to have more removal because Chris is going to be out in front of you. But I think the ability, it's just so hard to stick the enchantments, and the fact that they get blown up at instant speed can really swing the race around. And there's nothing wrong with going with the conventional approach. I've just, over time, have become dubious about these Chain of the Rocks and Banishing Light type effects because you need a saturation of burn to win the game no matter what. And those cards are likely to just get blown up in post-board games.
It's not red-green monsters, it's Jund monsters, and that does matter.
Yeah, absolutely, definitely. Against green-red monsters, go ahead, bring in all your Chain of the Rocks and Banishing Lights, have a ball. But once Abrupt Decay and potentially Golgari Charm is in the mix, it becomes a lot different.
All right. On Chris's side, one card sticks out to me. That's going to be Nylea's Disciple. It's a large source of life gain. And pretty much any amount of life gain is a 2 or 3 for 1 against a burn deck.
And that's another interesting dynamic to this matchup. Under normal circumstances, you can take out cards like Skullcrack against Jund monsters because Skullcrack's not very good against their sources of life game. It's just 1 point at a time with Courser, Crewfix, and Scavenging Ooze. But now with the deck list being public, Nylea's Disciple Skullcrack becomes much more attractive because it's a very good answer to Nylea's Disciple.
Yeah. Now, watching game 1, I'm concerned on Erin Diaz's side of the matchup because Courser of Crewfix just seemed incredible in that game. And I don't see, even post-board, like, that Diaz has a great way to deal with that.
Well, if he has his white mana early and often, then he can just race with burn spells. But it is a challenge. I mean, it's just one of the really good cards that Chris has in the matchup. And if it's there early on in the game and uncontested, it's going to be hard for Erin to win. That's just part of the matchup.
He doesn't ever stop to burn it, does he?
His hand has to be real good.
The deck does 20 very well, but doesn't do 30 so hot. Yeah. All right.
All right, so I think there might have been a card slid off there.
Yeah, if a card slid off his deck, both figuring it out.
So yeah, looks like we're good to go here. And Erin looks like he's keeping 7 ready to go, and Chris contemplating a mulligan here.
Yep. We'll see both players keeping, and we are underway. And this time, Erin starts off on Fire Drinker Satyr. That looks like it has come out of the sideboard for this matchup.
This is, again, a card just like Peak Eruption where on the play, I think there's merit to bringing it in, and on the draw, it's pretty bad. But this is a good spot for it. I mean, it's going to be probably 2, maybe 3 points of damage here. Chris can't block it on the second turn with a Sylvan Caryatid, assuming that Erin has a second land, and this is a good start. If you're going to have it on any turn, this is the turn.
And you had not mentioned this card when talking about things you could sideboard here. But it does, I mean, so what is the risk of it? I'm not saying it's wrong. You know, why wouldn't you board? You know, this to me, like, it seems so weird to have a 2-1 for 1 in your sideboard.
It is really excellent against blue-white decks and Esper control decks that can't play with a ton of creature removal spells. And when you have it in your opening hand, it represents a lot of damage. I don't think it's very good in the Jund Monsters matchup because it gets invalidated so quickly. It essentially has to be in the opening hand for it to be any good. But this is a good spot for Erin to have it. So right now, we're getting some sort of confirmation issue with the sleeves here.
It's 9 cards. He has too many cards is what's happening here.
Okay.
We saw that when he drew his opening hand. I think there was something where Chris was like, hey, yeah, we're not sure. We'll let you know as we know more. But yeah, currently underway. And you know, I'm not even sure that Erin has a second land.
It did not look that way because he just attacked with his Fire Drinker Satyr and
didn't play the land first.
Looked like he was passing. So if Chris has any sort of hand there, he's probably a huge favorite. But
yeah, you can't. Yeah,
we'll get that situation sorted out and resolved momentarily. Yeah, it looks like that is a game loss for drawing on extra cards, unfortunately, for Erin, but already down a game, and it looked like that game was not going well for him either, more than likely.
And just to throw out, like, if you ever do accidentally draw too many cards in your opener, don't start the game. Like, the penalty, if I say, oh, crap, I drew 8, and you're supposed to tell your opponent, I drew 8,